with the new song "Let Me Down Easy," you co-wrote that one with Pete Cornell. What do you like about him as a songwriter that you sought him out to co-write?
Well, I knew Pete obviously back in the 80s when I moved to Seattle. I moved there in 1984. I had met him a couple times, just via friends and stuff, through shows and whatnot. Big fan of the band he had called Inflatable Soul. We had a ton of friends in common. We never played shows together, but I always kind of admired his song. I mean, he was so much different than Cris, and being that he was a few years older, I think his songwriting was a little more of like the classic approach to songwriting, whereas Cris just seemed to be so asymmetrical with his songwriting. So they were two entirely different people. Years and years go by, and Candlebox blows up and does its thing, and we get together in 2018 to play a couple reunion shows in the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the debut album. And Pete came to the show with his wife, Amy, who's my manager, Amy Decker. And we just started chatting. I mean, I hadn't seen him in so long. I was like, man, I'm first of all so sorry about the loss of Cris and loss to your family and this and that. I mean, I can't imagine what you're going through. And he's like, yeah, it's life is tough, but you have to move on, and you have to find your kind of footing again and try and live. And it just got me thinking. I was like, I'm doing a new record, and I said I would love to write with you. I would love to co-write with you on something. I said, I was a huge fan back in the day, and maybe it's just this is kind of syncretic that we're kind of meeting right now again after 20 some odd years, and I'm about to make a record. So I told him what I was writing. I told him the style of music that I was going for. I wanted something that was swampy, bluesy, dark. I even said to him, I said, maybe a little bit of exercising some demons, that maybe we both have. And he was like, well, let me think about it. I'll send you something. And not long after, he sent me this track on acoustic, and I was just so struck by it immediately. It had the same kind of energy and ass to it that it has now when we recorded it, which, to me, that's always a sign of a great song, is if you can play it on acoustic and it feels like a recorded, full length, full band version of a song. That always makes me kind of feel like you're onto something, and you should probably stick with it. So I called him up and I said, listen, man, I'm going to track this with the guys, and I would love to have your input on it because you wrote it. And, I don't want to throw something out there without your approval. We tracked it in pre-production. I sent it to him. He said, man, this is exactly what I was hearing. Let's go for it. So I wrote the lyrics to the track in the studio when I was recording the vocals, which was January of this year. So I didn't have lyrics for it, but I knew what I was going to be singing about. I knew what I wanted to talk about in the song. But, I tend to do that. I don't really write lyrics until the music is totally speaking to me. I'm not one of those guys that walks around with, books and books of lyrics. I'm not that person. I'm more of an off the cuff kind of a guy. So really it just kind of stemmed from that meeting, Reconnecting back in 2018 in Seattle. I hadn't really thought to be honest with you, I wasn't even ready to make a record. I knew I was writing songs, but I just really wasn't in the mindset to do it. And this song, when he sent it to me, just kind of sparked something in me, and it was really the catalyst of making the record.
Wow. Okay. And how are you guys different as songwriters? How do you guys complement each other as songwriters? Where does he stop and you begin, et cetera, in this process?
Well, I would say we're comparable in the sense that we understand a verse and a chorus. I don't really know, to be honest with you, the differences, other than, I think when Pete sent me the song, he had a bit of a melody that he was singing, but he didn't have lyrics either. So, after, when I spoke to him, I said, how do you write lyrically? And he said, I usually let the song kind of dictate to me what I wanted to say. And that's exactly how I do it. So I think we're probably very similar, especially in this day and age, 20, 30 years later that we've been writing music, that we don't really overthink it. Of course, we're not writing Sgt. Pepper's or anything like that. So it's not like we have some enormous amount of pressure on us to produce something that is groundbreaking or reinventing the wheel. I think that our styles kind of, they accent one another, much like ketchup to French fries, we're not that different. Although he's a far more prolific writer than I am. I know that he's been churning out songs, for the last 30 years, 2 to 3 songs a week. I don't know what his catalog consists of. But, I did say to him, I said, I love this song so much. I would like to, write 2 or 3 more with you. The record was supposed to come out this past August.
Right.
I'm kind of happy now that it hasn't, because it might give me the opportunity to maybe write 1 or 2 more with him, get them recorded by the time the record comes out, and throw them on the album. Because I like this song so much. I like how it came out and turned out. So it'd be interesting to see if we can do that.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I was wondering, because I thought you guys had finished the bulk of the recording as of January.
Yeah, all done.
And then no one thought that the world could get stranger, and yet 2020 did. And you've had all this time, and you've pushed back the release of Wolves. And so, because I was wondering, it's like, how do you not, as someone like you guys who tends to filter your thoughts and the atmosphere that you're dealing with through your music, how do you not just keep writing through all of this insanity and then get the urge to expand the album, take advantage of the delay,
the time off? Yeah. That's really kind of, I think that's what we're doing and what we're not doing. We're doing these cover songs. We did For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. And every single one of the songs that we're doing is kind of a reflection on the times now. What we're dealing with, not only the pandemic, but the disenchantment of the world and society in general, and this lack of empathy that I think everybody has right now. So we're doing like One by U2. We're doing Running on Empty, Jackson Browne. We're doing Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. We're doing Bohemian Rhapsodies, or not Bohemian Rhapsody. We're doing Under Pressure by Queen and Bowie. We're doing everything that everybody else is doing. So that's kind of sidetracked. We're doing Ventilator Blues by the Stones, which is killer. But no pun intended. But the thing is that's kind of sidetracked writing more for the record, because we're doing it. We have 2 guys that are on the East Coast, 3 guys that are on the West Coast. We're having to do it in our own individual studios. Not all of us are whizzes when it comes to recording. So there's that learning curve, that thing that we tried to figure out how to make this work, perhaps for the benefit of not only ourselves and enjoying these songs, but for our fans, because we want to release this 12-song compilation of cover songs as a gift with Wolves. Because we can't sell it, because we don't own the rights to the songs, and then there's mechanicals on it, sort of thing that goes along with it. So we would have to give it away. So that's kind of really taken up a lot of our time right now, is finishing these songs. Although Pete did just text me last week, and he said he's got two tracks for me to sing to.
Oh. And
then I've got this other project I'm actually doing with Don Miggs from Miggs, which we're tentatively calling Future Trash. Which is just kind of an extension of he and I's real influences and inspirations musically. So I'm keeping myself busy with that. But I think that if when Pete sends me these 2 tracks, if they work correctly for the rest of the record, I'll get in the studio with Robin and Adam, and we'll track those 2 songs, and I'll send them off to Brian and Island on the East Coast, have them do the guitar parts, and then we'll send them those tracks to Carson and Grant, who mixed the record for us. So.
Now, I was watching your guys' version of "For What It's Worth" by Buffalo Springfield, and you know, it always seems to me there's covering a song for a show where it's you're, you know, it's fine if you just want to do it as is because it's just the energy of the moment. But when you're doing it, when you cover a song to record it, usually it's about, okay, I don't want to do it note for note because there's no point because the original already got that perfectly, you know. And so it's like, all right, I'm going to put my own different kind of spin on this particular tune, or just my own small reinterpretation. So like for what it's worth, what was your perspective going into that with how you guys were going to tackle it?
Well, I talked to Island about it, the guitar player that's always to my right on stage, blonde kid.
Yeah.
I said, you know, if we're going to tackle this, I would like to do it in the vein of a Radiohead, maybe, Fake Plastic Trees, something that's a little bit more androgynous and open. And Island's so good when I give him those kinds of directions or that kind of influence per se. He can do it in a matter of minutes. And when I sent him that, I sent him the scratch vocal track, and then he wrote the song around it, and that was it.
You know, diving back into Let Me Down Easy, and you were talking about exercising of demons. I saw in this other interview when you were talking about this song, you had this great line where you said, there is darkness in enlightenment, which number one, I thought could be a song in its own right. And number two, not to go too heavy, but you know, it's such a interesting turn of phrase. And I'm curious, with darkness and enlightenment, do you think it's a necessary balance, or is it because there's a flaw in the system?
I think there's a flaw in the system, but it could be that it's a necessary balance as well. We're all sinners. Those of us who choose to throw stones that live in glass houses, or that holier than thou attitude. It's until you're walking on water and turning water into wine. You really should keep your mouth shut. You're only here for a short period of time, and it's just one of those things. I think that people get so distracted by this kind of belief that there's a God above and he's going to fix everything for us. And I mean, listen, I've been writing about this since the debut album. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I was an altar boy for several years. I've seen it all. And luckily I was one of the Catholic kids that wasn't kind of oppressed by a priest, if you will. Yeah. But it's just I think that there's just so much darkness out there, and these people that go to church to try and find this kind of element of freedom or direction, they're just missing the point most of the time. I think you can find that within yourself, and I don't understand why a mega church has to, the pastor has to have $30-40 million when half of his flock can't afford to eat. And that's why I'm saying there's darkness in enlightenment, because you're supposed to be learning something about yourself going here, and then here's this person that's telling you what you're supposed to be doing. They're not doing any of it. Of course, for example, is Jerry Falwell Jr. and what just happened with that. So I mean, it's just I think there's a massive flaw in the system, but I think that flaw is that we're human, and the saying is that God granted us free will. That's the worst thing he could have given us, because we abuse that freedom on an hourly basis.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's some people that would argue it's like, okay, what they're offering is an actual enlightenment. It's packaged enlightenment that, the kind that, really should just sit on a virtual shelf in an Amazon kind of store kind of thing. And it's about marketing and sales and that kind of thing. And so but I understand the whole, especially in these times, the desperation that comes with looking for something and preying on people's desperation. And along those lines, there's this particular lyric that I loved in the song where it says, "Can't find the missing pages from my life," which, you know, everyone I talk to, that pretty much sums up their experience with 2020. There's this feeling, they were headed for stuff, they had plans for stuff, there may be some good things on the horizon, and then it just, all got ripped away. And the band Candlebox itself has had its own ups and downs, but you've continued to endure. And I'm wondering, from your perspective as a musician, what's your secret to persistence? Because I think that's that's key for a lot of people right now.
It's financial. No, I think the key to my persistence really is just I love what I do. When I was a kid, this is all I could dream about. What sold it for me was my first Kiss record. Seeing these larger than life creatures, and I was 5 years old, and I was like, "What is this? This is the most amazing thing." It's like you're getting your first comic book or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that it's what I always wanted to do. And I also know that I have something to say, and whether or not it's right or wrong, it's certainly just my opinion. But I have found that certain things that I speak about resonate with my flock, if you will. That I feel sometimes I am a bit preachy, but I think that comes from being raised by a father who was born in 1922 and stormed Omaha Beach on June 6th of 1944, and married my mother after 6 months in 1959, and they were married for 45 years until my father passed away at the ripe old age of 81. I mean, my dad spoke to me every day about life and the importance of relationships and respect and caring and understanding and empathy and all these great things. So I feel that maybe what my father taught me, I'm passing on to, my extended family. So that's kind of what keeps me motivated. And the fact that I absolutely love what I do. The last two shows we played this year before everything got shut down were in Florida, this place called the Culture Room. And they were two of the most enjoyable concerts I've ever played. One of which, because I was, I'd taken a little bit of hallucinogenics. I had taken some mushrooms that were in chocolate, and and I was like, man, this is just the greatest. And I mean, who gets to do this? I get to do this every single day. It's just brilliant. I love it, and I'm thankful that people allow me to do this and have allowed me to do this for going on 30 years now.
Yeah. But also, I mean, I think it's cool that you and obviously other bands, like you said, you figured out a way that even though you guys are spread across the country, you could record these cover tunes. And, because the musicians, the music world has just gotten the crap kicked out of it by, all measures. And that's another example of the persistence of where some people are kind of holed up, Hobbit style. You guys are, still pushing like, okay, how can we do this without endangering anyone, but still keep, pushing ahead for our craft. And is that same drive that, was kind of instilled in you at a young age?
I don't really know. It's a good question. Possibly. I mean, I think I'd have to think about that a little bit longer. I would say it's more so the fact that Island and Brian are very, very prolific musically, and they really kind of push me. I mean, you'd mentioned earlier the ups and downs of Candlebox. I mean, I've gone through 3 drummers and countless guitar players and several bass players. I'm the one constant in the band, but those that surround me now and support me musically are the most prolific, talented guys I could ever hope to be playing with. So I think they're the ones that kind of keep me relative, if you will, or relevant and to the music. I mean, they're always sending me stuff.
Mm.
And this whole cover song thing was basically Island's idea. Island and Brian, they're like, listen, we should do something, for what it's worth. And then I was like, well, let's do a whole EP. And then, that grew into let's put it out and give it to everybody. So, I'm thankful to those guys for, I guess maybe what I'm saying in a roundabout sort of ways. I'm thankful that these musicians that I play with keep me grounded and directed.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm always fascinated by singers who were initially drummers. And I've besides our friend Fred LeBlanc, interviewed John Easdale from Dramarama, who, he's a drummer who became a singer. And number one, what advantage do you think that gave you as a singer, as a songwriter, to come from a drumming background?
Probably the understanding of the song, and the structure of a song and the ins and outs. I mean, the beauty of drummers and John Bonham and Peter Criss, Neil Peart, and those kinds of guys are all musicians that I kind of aspired to play like, just because they had such interesting ways to get in and out of parts. And of course, Neil Peart, being a lyricist as well, was, when I learned that as I got older, was just mind bending. This guy's not only just behind the kit doing all the shit he's doing, but he's also writing all the fucking lyrics. It's I guess that's what I learned from these guys that I could continue to take with me to this day. I mean, when we write songs, I'm always writing around the beat. With the perfect example with this track, Let Me Down Easy, I knew that I wanted this song to feel like a Black Rebel Motorcycle Club song.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted it to feel like. And because I love that band. And I think that there's right now, save for the Black Keys, nobody really doing that kind of music. So I love Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. So I pulled from that when I spoke to the guys about it. I said, this is the drum beat I'm looking for. It has to feel, like you've just sold your soul and now you're running down the train tracks away from the devil trying to get away. And, that's what I guess what I've learned as a musician, is that I can utilize that energy as a singer and pull it from that energy of the drummer, and then in turn allows me to sing around the rhythms and move in and out of patterns, and and kind of play both parts, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And then when you're communicating with your drummers, how often are you using, with what you want to hear, how often are you just using, are you actually using terminology like paradiddles and things like that? How often is it,
No.
is it you getting behind the kit and saying, all right, this is kind of what I'm looking for?
Yeah, generally it's me. I'll sit down behind the kit and knock it out. I mean, even on this, Dave Cruisin, when we were tracking the song, he's like, well, why don't you play the part? And I was like, no, man, you're a far better drummer than I could ever hope to be. And that's, what I love about Dave. And that's why he's played with me for so long. Is that he's exactly who I'm looking for in a musician. And of course, Robin Diaz is the same. When Robin plays me, when Dave's not around, I look for those drummers that have that kind of energy. But it's usually, I mean, I can certainly talk in the drummers linguistics, if you will, but most of the time it's really I just sit down and think, this is what I'm looking for. I do it a lot at sound checks and stuff. I'll tell Carlos, our sound guy, say, hey, record this for a minute because I'm going to use it at a later date, and then I'll he'll record whatever drum beat I'm playing, and then I have a collection of MP3s that are just drum parts, and I'll send it to the guy, say, listen, I want to write something around this, and like that's Disappearing in Airports. Essentially, that entire record was written around, I'd say 90% of that album was around MP3s of drum parts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
because that's just how I think, it makes me, because I know what I want to work off of. And if I have it in front of me, then I can work off.
Right. So that's your foundation, of
my 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. and then going through all these different interviews, the one thing that kept coming up again and again and again was the term reluctant lead singer. Um, so first off, how does one balance or jostle the idea of A, being reluctant and, hesitant to move in this direction, but B, also wanting to improve and evolve? It seems like those two might be, wrestling different sides of you within each other. How do you balance that, or get them to a peace accord, so to speak?
Well, I'm certainly insecure. So, I mean, I think to be a lead singer, you have to be insecure, because you're looking for that instant gratification that you're good, you're talented, people like you. So I think for me, I got to be honest with you, man. When I sing on a record or when I sing live, it's really about pushing myself as far as I can go, because I love it. I only love it those 2 hours I'm on stage, but at the same 2 hours that I'm on stage, my mind is playing all sorts of tricks on me. And, that note was wrong. You didn't get it right this time. You missed that pattern, or you missed this, lyric, or you switched the lyrics up. I mean, I've stopped far behind live several times because I fuck up the first verse.
Being lost in that game can make it difficult to kind of remember where you're at.
And what do you do to knock yourself out of that headspace?
I'm sorry?
What do you do to knock yourself out of that headspace of,
Stop the song. No, I think a lot of times it's really, it's taking a deep breath. You have to do that sometimes when you're, for me, it's about getting on stage. That's the hardest part. That moment before I step out there to sing, it's just a nice, deep, long breath, let it out slowly and say, okay, here we go. Because the way I sing, I'm somewhat acrobatic with my voice, and there are times when I'm supposed to hit, that Robert Plant note that I feel mentally I can't hit, and I've got to remember how I did it, and that happens in 2 or 3 songs during the set. Like my mind, right? I look at the set list, I'm like, oh shit, here it comes. I'm going to have to hit that note. How did I do it? And obviously I don't know if it's ever not happened for me unless I had laryngitis or something, but your mind it's a tricky thing. And like I said, I'm super insecure, man. So, that's why I guess I'm a much better singer than I am a drummer.
Cause for a listener's perspective, you don't get that. I mean, so, earlier today, I was going back through this, which has the live version of Far Behind, where you guys segue into Voodoo Child.
Yeah.
That's, reluctant singer is not the term that comes to mind, that because you attack it, and you have to attack it with, massive amounts of confidence. And so, I just found it interesting that, you still have that kind of reluctant singer perspective, but you've really, gone for it and embraced it, and all out in those kind of occasions.
Yeah. Well, when I was a drummer, it was far easier for me to sit behind a kit and screw up than it was for me to step out in front of an audience as a singer and screw up. But the difference is, I was a drummer up till this band. I had not ever considered really being a lead singer in a rock band. I'd seen concerts where I was like, oh, that's a cool job. Look at how much control he has of the audience. But ultimately, I always found myself, even to this day, I still watch the drummer. I mean, I went to see, we played Cabu Del Mar 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. We shared the bill with, tons of amazing bands. Robert Plant closed out the night, and we went and I'm watching the greatest singer of all time, one of my idols. And I found myself staring at the drummer the entire show. I wasn't even interested in what Robert was doing. So that tells me that I still am that, long lost drummer somewhere in my heart, that's still what I want to do in a band. And it's never going to happen. I've tried it several times and it just doesn't work out. you know, it's not my gig anymore. I'm a singer. But
Yeah.
reluctantly I'm a singer.
Yeah. But no, and I think it's great that you've, all right, this is the place I'm coming from though. And so it's like, I'm not a drummer, but it informs everything that I do.
It does. It really informs everything I do.
And then, you're talking about vocal gymnastics that you sometimes have to do. The first time I ever encountered you guys was opening for Rush in I think 93 or something like that.
94.
94.
Yeah.
I had not heard of you guys at all at the time I showed up in Los Angeles at the Forum, and I was really impressed because I didn't know what to expect. But one thing I clearly remember was you physically throwing your entire body into this massive arc every time you hit a chorus. And I was just amazed at someone that physically committed so much to a performance, and how much of that is conscious and how much of that is just the moment overtakes you.
I've always said that if you're not losing yourself in the song, whether you're a singer, drummer, bass player, guitar player, you're not feeling it. I grew up on, like I said, Kiss was one of my favorite bands, but really I grew up on punk rock music. And one of my first concerts was the Black Flag Dead Kennedys and the Butthole Surfers in San Antonio, Texas. And I remember vividly, not only Henry Rollins, but Jello Biafra and their conviction to what they were singing about, and how much those songs meant not only to me, but obviously to everybody else that was in the room, all the other kids that were there watching these two brilliant performers. I mean, Gibby Haynes was just tripping on acid, so it didn't really matter. But these two artists taught me so much about, delivery and respect of the song and the craft. And when I sang those songs, I didn't write those songs for anybody but me. Those are my stories, and to this day, they're still my stories. Far Behind is still about Andy Wood. It will always be about Andy. And You is always going to be about my getting away from drugs and shit when I was growing up. Those are what throw me into that performance. Those songs, what they mean to me. And of course, you're opening for Rush. The audience hates you anyways, so you might as well enjoy that show. And so which one of you guys is up here opening for Rush?
Right.
And I use that a lot when people kind of, I guess, you get the trolls on the internet that hate on your Facebook page or whatever, and I'm like, listen, you can get back to my burger and fries now, because I'm the one that's actually, you're trolling me for what I do, and that's unfortunate, and of course I don't do that, but that's what I would like to be able to say to these people. But ultimately, I've said it to every single musician that we've ever, we always take young bands out on the road that we want to. That's what Rush did for us. I think we're the last band that ever opened for them. And they really spent a lot of time talking to us about our responsibilities to not only the music, but to our fans and to young bands that we have a responsibility to teach people about. If we get to the level of success that they felt we would, and of course they were right. We sold 4 million records, and it was brilliant. So, but I always tell them, if you're half-assing this, what's the point? You need to be 100% in the game, and you need to know what it is that you're talking about, singing about, playing. What parts you're playing, why you're playing it, why you choose it. Don't try and sound like any other band. Be who your band is supposed to be, and be it 100%. That's probably why Candlebox is still around. To be honest with you, is because we always were that. We never tried to be Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains or Soundgarden or Nirvana or Mother Love Bone or any of those bands from Seattle. We were always ourselves, and it it hurt us because we could have very easily gone the direction of Pearl Jam and made an album like 10 because we're capable of that. We could have made the Temple of the Dog record because we're capable of that. As musicians, we can play those parts, but it wasn't us. It would never work because we weren't those characters. We were 4 guys that really had nothing musically in common. It's the happiest accident the 4 of us ever had. And I've often said that Simon Cowell probably put Candlebox together like a boy band because we didn't really know one another. We got thrown into this, arena musically, and we're able to make, great songs and write great records that went a long, long way. And I attribute that to the four of us being so different musically, but giving, every ounce of ourselves to that debut album is why people still, I guess are, gravitate towards the debut record, because it's 100% us on every single song.
Yeah. Yeah. And then finally, the other surprise that came up for me while I was doing research for this was you've apparently become quite the bread maker.
I stopped. I killed the mother by accident.
Oh,
I did. I was making sourdough. I was making 2 loaves every other day.
yeah.
Shipping them to people, giving them to people. And then I went away on a vacation this summer to visit some friends, actually to go see my mother in Seattle and visit some friends up there. And I killed it. I put her in the fridge and she never woke up. So
Oh,
my
okay.
bad.
But I mean, and I'm curious, is that like a total yin to rock music's yang? Is it?
I mean, listen, everybody was doing it, but the beauty is that I found great pleasure in it. It's a 24-hour process. It's not, when you're making sourdough bread by hand, it's not something, unless you have a proofing drawer in your oven, which most people in America don't. That's more of an English thing, an Australian thing. You're not, you've got to proof that overnight. But the process of making, the bread, letting the leaven set overnight, folding and kneading by hand. I did everything by hand. It's 24 hours, so that's why I was doing it every other day. I was buying 50 pound bags of flour once a week and going through 50 pounds of flour once a week.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But it really was so calming. And, and again, it's that putting yourself into a craft 100%. Now I had people tell me that, whether they were being nice to me or not, that it was the greatest sourdough bread they've ever had.
It looked fabulous. I'll say that.
Pretty delicious.
Yeah.
My wife is 5 pounds on me.
My wife has become expert at soft pretzels during this time. So I've learned, at least from a taste wise and from a viewer's perspective, to appreciate all that goes into it. So, okay, cool. Well, that covers all my stuff. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to discuss?
The record will be out sometime in the spring. I'm sorry. We tried to get it out this year, but we're on those. You have that issue with distribution companies, and there are other artists that are far more important than Candlebox.
Right. Yeah.